Hello everybody, behind me is a green wall, and this video is about Pet Sematary. Now, like I mentioned before, Pet Sematary is very, the word I used was relentless. The topic is about death. It's very much like the way different people perceive death and just how people process with it, and so it's a very sensitive subject matter, and I understand that not everybody is okay with discussing it like in this detail. So just letting you content warning for this video going forward, I guess. Today I'm watching I believe it was '89 version of the movie. I will be going back and watching the newest one. I think came out in 2019 soon, but I'm not sure when. I couldn't watch both of them. I ran out of time. Yeah, February 2009. 2019 version. I didn't have time to watch it, so I'll have to go back and do a review of it later. But one thing I wanted to point out before we jump into the thing is I picked this copy out because something's wrong with like the binding of it. If you look, you see that, and then you go over here and like look at, because this is supposed to take up the entire spine, the title, but it doesn't. It's like the picture is like shifted. And look back here, it cut off part of the description in the back. So like the picture just completely shifted. Luckily the words in the book are unharmed. But yeah, for whatever reason the binding is off. So I was like, oh, I'll pick that one, what the heck. So yeah, Pet Sematary. Since my last video, I did finish this book. I'm talking about it now. I actually do really like it. I decided that I do enjoy it quite a bit, but it is very, very intense. And there are several instances where it's interesting to see how the different characters react to death differently. I think the first instance of death in the story is Victor Pascal. In the very beginning, Lewis is the doctor at the University of Maine, and he, on his first day on the job, there's a guy who died in well, he didn't die yet, but it was a toboggan, or maybe it was just a sledding accident, I'm not sure. I think it was a toboggan, though, I'm not sure, I'm not even sure if that's how you say it. Anyway, but, yeah, he got hurt really bad, and so he died almost immediately when he got to the hospital, and that first depiction is very very clinical and isolated because Lewis is a doctor, and so that's kind of how he views it. It's just a natural part of the human experience is just death. Then we move on to, I think, yeah, so then we have a flashback. Later on, we have a flashback to Rachel, Lewis's wife. When she was a child, she talks about how her sister Zelda had spinal meningitis, I think is how you say it. And that process is just a very long, I don't know the details of the disease, so honestly I'm just talking about what I know from the book. I've never experienced that. I've never seen anybody that had it, so I don't know. But from what the book is saying, it's sort of just a very long process. Like, I have experienced this, but people, just diseases in general that kind of slowly are killing the person over a long period of time, like cancer or whatever. And so that's kind of, that depiction is just this disease that's slowly decaying Zelda over, I don't know the time frame, over a period of time, a long period of time. And so her experience, Rachel's experience with death is more emotionally involved. It's more, cut this part out. It's emotionally, it's a lot more grueling and torturous, I guess would be a good way to put it. And so she is just completely just turned off by the idea of death at all. She doesn't like it. She doesn't even like thinking about death. She doesn't like telling her kids about death. Because at this point they said, I don't remember how old Ellie is, but she's relatively young. they said that they already had the talk, if you know, you know, with the kids, but they haven't talked anything about death. And so when they move into Ludlow, Maine, the family moves into Maine, they meet Judd Crandall. He's a native Maine, well, not native. He's grown up in Maine. And so he's very familiar with the area. He takes them to the Pet Sematary, but like the good half of the Pet Sematary, which is where kids bury their animals. Very wholesome, normal, natural, everything. And as soon as he takes them there, Rachel's very unhappy with this whole thing. And this is really Ellie's first experience with death. And so she's asking Lewis a ton of questions, and this sets Rachel on edge because of her experiences. And then I think the next brush with death would be when, I don't remember the name of Judd's wife, but his wife dies. And that is viewed more as just kind of like a happy thing. We don't really see this in media, but when sort of an older character dies, it's more when an older person dies, it's kind of in general, but in this book specifically, in, I don't remember her name, when Mrs. Crandall dies, it's sort of, they're just celebrating her life. It's a happy moment. They're not happy that she's dead, obviously, but they're kind of celebrating her, and her whole family's there, and it's a happy experience. Just kind of, they're just celebrating her and all of her life, and all of her friends and family are there. And then I think then there is Church the cat. He dies, and that's sort of the inciting incident of the whole story, if you think about it, because as far as the actual narrative of this ground that you can bury dead things in, they come back to life, it's not even really introduced until about, I would say, halfway through. So the first half is more just dealing with this death subject matter and stuff like that. But yeah, so Church gets run over by a truck, and instead of telling Ellie and his whole family about it, he just decides, actually, he puts it off. He says, I'm not going to talk to him about it until they get home. They're in Chicago with the grandparents for Thanksgiving, and he's in Maine alone because he had to do doctor stuff or whatever. So Judd says, well, we don't need to tell him about it because we can just, there's a part of this Pet Sematary that's kind of excluded from the rest of it. It was a Native American burial ground, obviously, because, they're cursed, whatever. We can just take your cat there. We can bury it, and then it'll come back to life, and your family will be none the wiser. But what he doesn't tell Lewis is that this place has kind of a power to it, kind of like the Overlook Hotel or Derry, Maine. This place is just evil, and it just has this way of manipulating people and events to its advantage. And so it's manipulating Judd to introduce Lewis to the Pet Sematary, so that later on, when his son dies, he takes him to the Pet Sematary, the bad half, obviously. But when they come back to life, they are not themselves. Literally, what it is it's they're. I don't know if they're possessed by the Wendigo, but the Wendigo is sort of there in this area. But they're possessed by some extra spiritual, paranormal entity. And so literally when they bring the cat back, it's almost like it doesn't know how to be a cat. It's just doing things weird, and it's just like, obviously not a cat. It's something else that's inside this cat's body. It's not actually a cat. So actually there's a flashback to Timmy Baterman, who died in the Second World War, I believe. I'm not sure. Might have been the first one. No, it was the second one, I think. Yeah, because America wasn't really involved with the first one. They were in the Great Depression. Anyway, so it was the second one, and instead of just burying him and having a funeral, his father brings him to the Pet Sematary, and he comes back, but he's obviously possessed, and this is a little bit different than the animals, because he is very clearly evil. The animals aren't necessarily evil, they're just different. Some of them are evil, but overall they're kind of just different. But this is very clearly possessed by a, I don't, is omniscient the word? An all-knowing being. He can just read people's minds, and he can just know their past and their relationships with other people. Anyway, so they kill him in the flashback, and then a lot of the book is just kind of spent leading up to this moment. We don't actually see a whole lot of the zombie baby. We do see a little bit more in the movie. I'll get to that in a bit. But the moments that we do see with the Gage and the cat, zombie Gage, which is the little child, and cat Church, I do really enjoy it. I'm trying to remember if there's anything crazy that he does in the book, because I know he does some crazy stuff in the movie that I'll get to, but I think in the novel it's more, yeah, I don't even remember. It's more from the perspective of Lewis, and so then when he gets to Gage, Gage has already killed Judd and Rachel, and so basically he just, very anticlimactic, he injects the zombie with morphine. And so, like I mentioned, Rachel was dead, and so he convinces himself that it's okay, and he'll take Rachel to the Pet Sematary, and it'll be different this time. And the interesting my favorite part about this book, I think, is just the slow process of how Louis Creed loses his mind. And when I say that, it's, you probably think about, oh, the Joker, how he goes crazy and kills a bunch of people, or even in The Shining, Jack Torrance is his name. He loses his mind and goes crazy. But this is different. Lewis is slowly losing his mind, but he doesn't go on a murderous rampage. He just kind of becomes a grunt, basically, for this evil spirit, the evil forces that are controlling this Pet Sematary. And so he's just, by the end of the book, he's just completely given in, and he's not even really there anymore, if that makes sense. But yeah, overall, pretty good book. I wouldn't recommend it because it's very sensitive subject matter. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It's definitely a good book. On to the 1989 movie. First thing about it, cast is not great. The kid actors are actually really good, but other than that, not really great. The movie was actually written by Stephen King, so as far as accuracy to the book, it's pretty close. The way that they depict Zelda in this movie is very scary. Again, I'm not even sure if this is accurate to the actual spinal meningitis, but it's just so weird the way she moves and all that. It's just crazy. I do really like Gage and Church, the cat and the little baby. Even before they're zombies, they're just fun to watch, because that kid is a very, very talented actor. I'm not even sure, I don't even know the kid's name, but he's just really, really good in this movie, and the cat was really trained well too. But yeah, it's a fine movie. It's not all that scary. It's not all that entertaining. It's just kind of fine. One criticism I have of just kind of Stephen King when he works on movies, is that you have a shorter time to tell a story. Like, if you have a movie longer than 3.5 hours, most people aren't going to watch it. And a lot of Stephen King's books are 400, 500, 600 pages long. And that's fine, because you can read a book over a span of as long or as short as you want to. But with a movie, you have to tell your story in less than 3.5 hours. And he really struggles with that, with including the proper character development and just the story information and the background information, because that's a lot of his stories are built around character backstory and sort of the lore as much as they are of telling the story. So that's why I think a lot of the time Stephen King works best in like a TV series or a miniseries format, because you have like 10 hours, 6 hours to really explore the story and then tell a solid narrative. Which is why it's really surprising when the Stephen King movie does really well, because they were able to cut it down but still have it be just as impactful. But yeah, this movie's, it's fine. I'm trying to think of if I have any other criticisms of it. It's just kind of meh. It's fine, I guess. Which is really a shame, because if someone were to adapt that book the way to adapt it well, I think that it would be a really impactful, really deep movie if you were able to do that well. But as far as I can tell, this one, obviously, I know it wasn't good, but the next one I hear wasn't very good either. I'll come back and do a review of that later. But yeah, that's it for now. You can check the links in the description for Patreon, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. Podcasts are down there too. And I will see you next time. Peace out.